If the customer doesn't see it, they don't think we have it and they won't buy it. And the opposite is true. Less is actually more. So we're looking at a floor plan and we would lay out the traffic aisles to get to all the departments. And then along those aisles is where you put your focal point displays. So it really happens on a floor plan, a CAD drawing, a blueprint, to use an old term. That is the best way to be able to lay out to see how someone's going to get to different points in the store. And then where and how are they getting to what I call the heartbeat of the store? And that's the checkout counter, the transaction counter. The brain actually will shut down if there are too many options. So too many things for someone to look at, people can't make a decision. And so they don't buy. So we call it sometimes the go in and clean, organize, and subtract method. I would always say retail is like the Darwinian's theory of the strong survive and the weak will be weeded out. And it is true.
Have you ever walked into a store and felt instantly like you want to buy more and you feel comfortable, all of that sort of stuff? When that immediate impression, I think, is so important in retail. That's why I've invited Lyn Falk, the owner of RetailWorks, onto the Footwear Retail Podcast this week. And I'm so excited to have you with me, Lyn. Welcome in.
Thank you, Peter. I'm very happy to be here. Excited to talk about the topics at hand.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's so much to talk. Retail stores are always evolving and really interested. Yeah, exactly. Right. If they're not, there's issue. And I think that's you lead the charge in a lot of that with what you do in store design and all the different things. So we're going to talk a little bit about the new and interesting things. We'll talk a little bit about how you help retail store owners and, of course, footwear store owners. I personally know a lot of people that you've helped with their brand and some of their store designs and things like that as well. And we got a chance to touch base a while ago. And I said, I just got to have you on as we met at the National Shoe Retailers Association big event, the summit that we had a month or so ago. So it was good to finally meet. We write in the same publications, Shoe Retailers Today, and it's like we haven't actually physically met. So it was great to actually physically meet and chat, and we'll carry on the conversation here today.
Looking forward to it.
Cool. So Lyn, 30 years now for RetailWorks, right? 30 years goes quick. It's amazing how time passes.
True. And a lot has happened in retail over 30 years.
Oh my gosh. So true. I mean, I've been a retailer for half of that for the last 15 years. And I, like you, have been around 30 years in business. I started in 94. And the first 15 years were in the service industry, and the last 15 years in retail. And even in the last 15 years, what a change. It's amazing. Tell us, kind of go back to those early days. We won't spend too much time on it, but go back to those early days of why you got the business going and some of the seismic shifts that you've seen over the years.
Oh gosh. And I would say, one of the first challenges back in the 90s that people were dealing with was, really a lot of the competition where there were businesses selling, whether it was gas stations, I think it was with the Beanie Baby craze, convenience stores started selling things that the regular general store or apparel store or department store was selling. So I remember first starting out, and it was just the amount of competition that retailers were having to fight against. And then, we do a lot of work on downtown main streets and historical buildings. So it was the urban sprawl. And then the big Walmarts and the big box stores that came in and wiped out a lot of independent retailers. And it really caused retailers and designers and consultants like me to say, what is going to keep that independent alive? What is going to keep them able to get people through their front door and get loyalty and get people to come there and buy versus going where they might get it a little cheaper down the road or drive a little ways. So that was probably the first, big hump to get over. And then I would say, 9/11 was a bit of a hiccup. And then 2008 with the economy collapsing for a while. And then we had COVID. So all of these things, I would always say, retail is like the Darwinian's theory of the strong survive and the weak will be weeded out. And it is true. Those that don't have the ambition, the passion, the desire to keep up, they end up having to close their doors. And really the ones that are excited about the upcoming trends or what to do different. And I say now retailers almost have to stand on their heads. They have to literally think and work and entertain outside of the box. Retail is not what it used to be anymore. Now, granted, there are a few stores that maybe have 100-year history.
Yeah.
And they're, no one wants them to change because they've been like that forever and it works for them. But there are not many like that. And so, it's always who's the upcoming target market and what are their desires and needs and how are they shopping and how are you delivering a retail customer experience to meet those expectations and needs.
When you look at some of that stuff, Lyn, as far as, because we've got to take that and put it into store design. I mean, the store design is basically your forte. And, how are you, when you think of that psychology of the different demographics and the different age groups and all of that, I mean, we won't go too deep into that, but how have store designs changed as the next 20-year sort of period comes up and we've got the Gen X and the Gen Y, all these different ones as they roll through, when you're putting your lens on that, how do you design for that? How do you design for the next 15 years?
Yeah. And there are a lot of different lenses that I look through when I'm designing a store for a client. And certainly the target market is a number one. And with these younger generations, they are expecting an omni-channel retail experience, which means there's a digital component. Right. So something on their phone or QR codes or an app. It's a very integrated way to shop. It's just not coming in without some digital component attached to them. There is going to be that. And they want to learn more information about the retailer or the product that they're looking at. And they want it instantly. So that's one lens that we're looking at. The second lens is what are the trends in retail in general? Like right now, retail is all about a social experience. It's about being out with friends or family and doing something that's a form of entertainment. Yes, they might be there to buy something for themselves or for someone else, but they want to learn something. They want to be, like I said, entertained. They want an efficient experience. So it's all about like what is shopping right now. And so the target market's one thing, and then just retailing as general. The third lens is because we are all humans, and we're Americans for the most part. Doesn't matter where you came from initially, but you are here, you're reading English, we are just, like I said, it's the physiological thing that we are humans. So we react to certain, I call it the laws of nature and elements and principles of design the same way because we're all human. So if you put the color red on a wall versus the color blue on the wall, we're going to have similar reactions to those colors just because we're human. Yeah. And we look at how our brain works. There's the very basic reptilian brain in the back here that was first developed. I don't want to get too far off here, but all the way up to the more recent brain, the neocortex up here. So this is more of the left brain and that defines, interprets a space. But we're still working way back from our instinctual fight or flight brain, that reptilian brain. And that is over 85% of our purchase decisions are made with our right brain, our emotional, our intuitive brain. So setting up an entire store to address the way we as humans interpret environment, experience an environment is huge. I mean, that's often where I will start first. Then I look at the trends and the brand and the target market. Oh, and the brand is another lens. So each individual retailer has to have a very strong message, a strong brand, a strong color, texture, logo, an aroma or a jingle. It's very sensory. And we try to bring a 2D brand into a 3D environment. So those are all ways that we work to keep a store successful.
I know some of the stuff that we've done with our shoe stores at Shootopia. We've created a jingle years ago and it continues to flow, and even backing music on different pieces and things like that continues to run. Just a variety of different things as you sort of laid it out there. Do you work with music production and you'll create jingles? Do you help people with rebranding logos and stuff like that? Or are you pretty much just sticking to let's do store development?
Well, no, we do. We've ended up backing into branding and logo development because sometimes that's always one of the first places we'll start with a question. It's like, where are your brand guidelines?
Yeah,
We need to
exactly.
see those. Do they need to be refreshed, tweaked, or some don't even have any?
Most
And
don't, I
so,
found.
yeah, so we now have graphic artists that work very closely with our interior designers, and we are doing branding now. We do not go as far as what I'd call like the old traditional advertising to get a jingle going. We might
Right.
recommend that,
Yeah.
but we wouldn't do that ourselves.
Yeah.
We might recommend that they have a photo shoot or get some, photography done,
Yeah, for
but we
sure.
wouldn't do that ourselves. So it's really an all-encompassing picture of what we want to see, but we will only take the parts that we're good at.
When you say the scent side of things, that tweaked one for me too. I spent 15 years in the cleaning services business, and we
Oh.
had thousands of air freshener machines out that we looked after on a weekly basis. And do you get involved in scent and things like that too?
Now, yes, that we will a little bit. Music selections and then
Hmm.
scents. And the one thing I always say is try not to get the plug-in artificial
Exactly.
dispensers, like aromatic
Yeah,
dispensers, because people can have reactions to
they
those.
can.
They can get headaches, they can get allergic reactions. So we try to be natural. And for just a small retailer, we suggest getting a little crock pot for $19
Hmm.
at a local store, and then filling it with water and putting in some essential oils or some spices or herbs or some citrus or something, depending on the time of year. Turn that on for the first hour of the day, shut it off. If you need to refresh it in the afternoon, turn it on for another hour. But that is, and it should be subtle. It shouldn't be like someone walks in and goes, holy cow, what's that smell? It's, oh, it smells nice in here. And a lot of what we do, we want that. It's almost, it's not, I don't want to say it's subliminal,
Yeah.
but it's subtle. So if someone walks in and they go, I just love shopping here. Like you said in the beginning of this podcast, you said, why does someone just feel good in a space? Well, as a business owner, you have to be able to break that down and say, well, they feel good because, we've got good carpet under their feet, so it's not loud, or we've got the right music, or we have the right scent, we have the right focal points, we have the right lighting, and it creates an unbelievable ambiance. We are in control of hundreds of variables, and it's really a powerful position if you think about it, because you can create this environment that motivates people to stop at certain places and read something, to engage in a display and pick something up, to walk an area that you want them to walk. People talk about dead zones. Well, there shouldn't be a dead zone if you lay it out correctly and you position focal points correctly and you illuminate those focal points. You can get someone to walk the entire store. So it's really about manipulating all these design variables to create that environment that is going to work.
I love it. I mean, when you were talking about sort of the flow, I was thinking of IKEA, how they guide you through the store, and whether there's physical boundaries or whether it's just sort of the want to go to the light, let's say, take me to the light. As footwear retailers, what we really want to do is we want to get them to touch that shoe.
Yes. The
Like
more you
if
can
you
get
pick up the
someone,
shoe,
yes.
it's like that's step one, right?
Yes, yes, you get closer to purchasing when you can actually pick something up, try it on. Absolutely. Just the walking through a store is just the very, very basic top layer. We need emotional engagement, physical engagement, sensory engagement, verbal engagement. There's a lot that goes on there, a lot of levels. And so when our job is done, we have to pass this over. Like it's like the new car, driving the new car. We're passing the keys over to the business owner and the employees, and we say, now you need to drive this. You need to read the manual. You need to know how to work and have operations work within this new environment. Because we just had an instant in another state with a retailer that's in more of kitchenware and
Hmm.
things, but redid two stores that were side by side in old historic buildings, completely remerchandised, culled a lot of the inventory, but the employees still wanted to work the old way. And the owner was just really frustrated. So I can't get people to be on board with the new way. And I said, well, that's where, again, even the Darwinian theory might come into play with employees. They have to be passionate and buy into the new culture, the new look, the new brand, the way you're going to start selling. And if you need to weed those out and get new ones that will embrace the new brand, the new look, the new layout, the new way to sell, then you have to do that.
How much coaching do you get into on that stuff, Lyn? Because really, we need to get the business owner, or in certain cases, it might be a general manager of a given location, whatever the case is, on board. And if they're not on board themselves, the physical changes can happen, but the mental ones can't, don't always happen. And so how much sort of when you're going and working with a chain or even an independent retailer with only one store, how much of those kind of conversations go on with your sort of coaching along as you pull them through this whole 3 months, 6 month, 1 year process of where they were to where they're going to be?
Yeah. We have a digital questionnaire that we send out ahead of time, and we try to get the owner to share that with key employees. So we get some buy-in from them and they feel like they have some ownership of the process. And oftentimes, they're the ones on the floor. They have insights that we need to know about. They might know their customer a lot better than, well, not might, they do know their customer a lot better than we do. So we have to gain a lot of information from them. So when they're part of the process, I have to say this one out west, I said they were part of the process and they still couldn't make the transition. But most do. Most, when they have that buy-in and they feel helpful, and it's like, and then they see that some of their suggestions were implemented, they have some pride in it. And then they're usually like, oh yeah, this is great. And they're more motivated. They feel like they have a fresh place to work. They can bring on some new skill sets themselves. Maybe they go to more training. But oftentimes, the majority of times, it will work. It's just every once in a while it doesn't.
If you think about a percentage, how many of the customers that you work with these days are new builds versus retrofits of old existing businesses, that have been around for whatever, 10, 20, 100 years that want to refresh? So how many are you kind of saying, I'm helping you build this new location? And how many would be sort of retrofit type thing?
That's a good question. And it kind of seems to vary throughout the year, but overall, maybe 50-50, maybe more 60 that do retrofits, refreshes.
Right.
But we do have a lot of people that maybe have one store and are opening a second store, or are moving completely their store to a new location. We have a lot of those going on right now, a lot. So that's probably a good answer.
Yeah. So you partner with a variety of different installers and suppliers and shelving companies and lighting companies and all sorts of different things that you would need to fit up a location, right?
Yes. And often we will first try to work with the client's local fabricators, contractors, subcontractors, of course, because they often have the relationships and it can be more cost effective. But when it comes to specialty items or some real custom cabinetry, we do have several options that then we can bring those in and have them shipped and installed. Lighting, though, is probably the toughest one to get local electricians on board to really understand how to illuminate a retail environment, especially if it's a smaller town and a smaller electrical company.
Yeah.
So we feel we're really having to up our game in lighting and understand and specify what we feel is the best. And we're trying to partner with some really great national companies that can help support that process, because honestly, you can have a beautiful design, but if it's not illuminated properly, you're not going to get the sales out of it.
Yeah. So when you're talking about the flow and you're talking about the lighting and the process that goes in there, tell us about that sort of visual hierarchy. When I'm walking through the store, where are my eyes going and how does that normally work? I think that's sort of a normal question that most retailers have. And even if they haven't used a professional like yourself, they're trying to think of flow. And some people, have door counters and it'll map traffic for people where they're going, where the hot spots are, all that kind of stuff, which is an interesting concept and sort of outside of this particular conversation. But if you're just trying to get this idea of how should I generally lay stuff out and how should I have a couple of focal points that are going to draw people, what would you suggest for somebody who may not be ready for sort of your services, but are thinking in the back of their head, I need a couple of small changes probably?
Right. And I always say, walk in the front door and stand there, if you were just pretend you're a new customer, where would your eyes go and how would you find what you're looking for? So, if you're looking for running shoes, or you're looking for kids' shoes or women's dress shoes, where are they? No one wants to walk into a store and feel stupid. So the first level is some really good signage that is, again, branded. So I don't want to see 14 different types, shapes, sizes, fonts, colors, and signs. Like all your department signs should look the same. But I want to be able to do a quick view scan of the store and say, oh, that's where I need to go. Oh, but I didn't realize they had XYZ because I see the sign quickly. That's where, again, it's almost with subliminal learning where the eyes will scan and kind of absorb, but I know where I need to go. So that's the first thing, is to identify where someone needs to go. Then you create a traffic pattern that gets you to any of these departments. So it's real easy to get from point A to point B. Shopping should never be an effort. And oftentimes retailers put these obstacles or these blocks in the way. And there's a difference between putting an obstacle in and a focal point display,
right?
Or the feet follow the eyes. So en route to wherever I want to go, I want to see a focal point display that will entice me, make me laugh, make me smile, make me want to pick something up. And I want those about every 15 to 20 feet in a store, depending on the size of the store. If it's a bigger store, we'd go 20 to 30 feet. And they start out lower. It might be a nesting table up front, and then you build up the height as you get back so that even a back wall can be considered a display focal point. But it's really important for signage, traffic aisles, and focal point displays to be located and laid out strategically, because those are your tools right there.
I love it. I think all of this, the stacking of the heights, most retail stores, not all, but a lot of retail stores tend to have a bit of height, 10, 12 feet type thing. If you're, you might be in an 8-foot ceiling, but I would say it's more common to have a bit more height. Would you agree?
Right. Yes. 8 foot is really residential. So almost every commercial space minimum would be 9 feet with a typical between 10 and 12.
So, there's a fair bit of height where you could either hang signs or layer things in from that front door in so that everything's sort of strategically positioned until you get to that back wall.
Right. Correct. Exactly.
And then how do you lay, we've got signage, and you said, well, I usually start with signage. What would the next step be?
With signage?
Yeah. No, like if we're laying out that we've got our department signed, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Where do we go now?
So then it's the actual traffic aisles.
Yeah.
So we're looking at a floor plan, and we would lay out the traffic aisles to get to all the departments. And then along those aisles is where you put your focal point displays. So it really happens on a floor plan, a CAD drawing, a blueprint, to use an old term. That is the best way to be able to lay out to see how someone's going to get to different points in the store. And then where and how are they getting to what I call the heartbeat of the store? And that's the checkout counter, the transaction counter. And it's interesting because transaction counters, a lot of conversation can happen around this counter because it can be a service counter, a repair counter, the checkout counter. And then we also have oftentimes what I call like satellite checkouts, or little spots where an iPad could be, and to keep people from clogging that service counter. So where are we positioning those? And are they little kiosks? Are they kiosks on casters? But we want to be able to also see not only how the shopping's working, but how is the checkout process working? And again, how to get to these places, or how can the employee get to the customer where they're sitting? Nordstrom's was one of the first ones in their shoe department where once you're done trying on your shoe, they come over and they check you out right where you're sitting. So you didn't even have to get up and carry the shoe box over to the checkout counter. So with the new digital applications, checking out is kind of a whole nother conversation these days, but we still need a main one. There's still enough people that are looking for that main checkout counter.
When you're guiding people through in the focal points you mentioned, how many of those focal points are sort of tactile, or how many of them are digital, or what are some of the focal points that you've seen that have really been working in the footwear industry in the last year or two, Lyn?
So the measuring devices like Atrix, those are great focal point displays, especially when you have a sign, hanging above it. Flat screens and movement video is always a great attention getter. So that becomes a focal point. Elevated display platforms, maybe with mannequins, especially like in a running department, they might have some running mannequins. And some shoe stores are certainly selling apparel too, so that makes sense. So elevated displays that are also well lit. So if you do have some mannequins or some bust forms or something that there's plenty of light on them. It could even be just something like an Instagram wall that doesn't necessarily sell shoes, but it's a place where someone can take a picture of themselves and it has the name of the store behind them. And it might just be a really cool wall covering or a really cool neon shape or something. It could be a green wall, anything to get someone to go, oh, what is that? Oh, I want to go over there. I want to see that. It could be a moving, rotating display. It could be stacks. It could be a display just of really cool sculptural elements with stacked ceramic shoe boxes. So it's a more permanent focal point display. It could be something that's really cool made out of shoelaces. Maybe it's something hanging from the ceiling. So there are a lot of ways. And this is when I said in the beginning, retail is entertainment these days. It's photography, it's Instagram, it's social. It's not just about selling a product anymore. It's about selling a brand and an experience.
I'm going to call one out, a focal point that I saw recently that I believe you had a hand in. And it was an awesome bench at ELM.
Oh, yes. Right. Yes.
They opened a new running store and their bench kind of it looks like a spine that kind of goes down and it curves and it's just the most interesting focal point for a sitting bench. I think it was just a really interesting piece.
Well, and Pete, just wait, because in another week or so, they're installing a focal point over their checkout counter. So it's going to be similar to those slats of the seating unit. It's going to come up and go over. So kind of create this really cool, like wood awning. And that you'll be able to see right away when you enter the store. And it's just, again, going to help draw someone in.
Yeah, I love it.
And really cool pendant lights can draw someone in. There are pendant lights that are, can be made out of, again, looking like shoes. I have in one of my presentations, I have a photo of a light fixtures with just 30 shoes hanging from it.
So cool. Yeah, there's so many different ways that we can create interest in the store and get people that, like you said, they're Instagrammable shots. And if somebody's going to take this picture and post it and say, I was in this cool store, just think of the value that that's bringing to you as, from an advertising perspective. You would pay, as much to have that posted or whatever the case is. It's an amazing thing when you create these interesting focal points.
Yeah. All of your customers can really be little walking advertisements for you if you create a cool environment.
Lyn, in the last few years, what might have been one of your favorite footwear transformations from what it used to be to what it is?
That's like saying, who's your favorite child?
Yeah, no, I suppose, but we don't have to actually name names here. But if you're thinking back of some of the brands, and we don't even really have to talk footwear, but because we're all retailers, and I think the biggest thing here is when we think of some of the coolest things that you've done and some of the things that maybe the owner was giving you sort of a lot of hesitancy on, and they finally said, okay, we'll do it your way, that kind of thing. Is there a couple of instances that has happened and you're like, you were kind of in the back of your mind, you're saying, I knew this would work. I'm so glad they did it.
Yes. I would say sometimes, clients get in their own way, and it's usually fear-based because they've never ventured out that far. Their dad didn't, their grandfather didn't, and oh my God, what are they going to do to the legacy of this store? Yeah. So that's a lot of it. But yes, when a client trusts us and maybe has seen some of our other work and talked to other retailers, then they're a little more likely to let go of that fear and say, you know what, I got nothing to lose. Let's do it. Let's try it. And if we need to pull back or shift it a little bit, you do. But for the most part, those that are willing to take the jump are very pleased. They'll say, oh my gosh, our sales are through the roof. People just, that's the ROI is most important to us. One, the client's happy, but two, that design is working. I grew up in a mom and pop retail environment, and my dad would always say, you take $1 from a retailer, you have to be able to improve their bottom line. And so now, we really built the business on good design, understanding consumer behavior, and profit loss statements and traffic counts and sales, what they call the basket sales or cart sales per person that's coming through. How are we increasing that? I'm not just going to create a beautiful store. It has to be a functional, profitable store. So those clients that allow me to kind of push that envelope a little bit and they trust, those are the best results, I feel. Otherwise, you get a watered down version and then no one's really ever happy. And you're not going to really see the sales results.
Yeah. And you've still put out a significant amount of money, right? In order to make some of the changes, maybe not all of them. And then it's just not where you want it to be.
Right. Exactly.
Lyn, I'll use this as sort of a quick win question. If you only had a weekend to freshen up your store, let's say in Canada, it was a long weekend this weekend as we're recording. And I know Memorial Day as we're recording here is next weekend for you.
Yeah.
If you were saying, okay, we usually close on the stat holiday, whatever the case is, I'm going to take an extra day. I've got 2 days that I'm just going to close down and knock off some things. Or maybe it's the winter months and you're saying, I'm going to close a winter, a weekend in the winter or a couple of days in the winter. I got 2 days. That's all the time I can afford to be closed. And I'm going to nail as much of this as I can. Where do you start and what would you do?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I get asked that a lot. The easiest things to change, I feel, right off the bat would be paint, color, adding an accent color somewhere or an accent wall, signage, getting your signage in order because so many people put up signs that no one reads because they have no sign design guidelines. So I mentioned earlier, you have your department signs, they all have to look similar. You have your promotional signs, they should all look similar. And when I say look similar, I mean the same size, the same card stock, and the same color system, the same font system, so that and the same thing with product benefit signs and sales signs, because you're training your repeat customers. They come in, they go, oh, they must have a new product because I see that their new product sign. It's just, again, subliminal. They're like, oh yeah, oh, they're having a promotion. I see their promotional sign. People start to read those signs. So getting your signage in order is a great thing to do on some slow days. And then merchandising. So this is one of the toughest things we have to deal with when we're working with a retailer that's been in business a long time and been doing things the old way. And that is putting everything on the floor. If the customer doesn't see it, they don't think we have it and they won't buy it. And the opposite is true. Less is actually more. The brain actually will shut down if there are too many options. And there's a famous study out there that talks about how many peanut butter brands were put on a display shelf in a grocery store. It might even have been Walmart. It might have been like 19 brands. Don't quote me on that. They reduced it to like 4 to 6 and sales went up remarkably. So too many things for someone to look at, people can't make a decision. And so they don't buy. So we call it sometimes the go in and clean, organize, and subtract method. You don't have to spend any money except on my team to come in and we reorganize. Because when you have an organized store and you don't have purses with scarves, with shoes, with signs, with props, with risers, I mean, no one sees that on a nesting table anymore. But you create a clean focal point display on a nesting table that has a theme and gets people motivated for a particular 1 or 2 product lines, you will sell more. So signage, color, and merchandising are my 3 go-tos for super simple. And then my 4th one, if you had the time and money and expertise, is to check your lighting.
I love it. And, we could dig into pretty much any one of these topics for a full episode. I think we could do an episode on lighting. We could do an episode on, layout, all these different things. But you've given us a great little overview, Lyn, on a few things, and hoping the idea of the podcast here is to get the footwear retailer thinking and get them to, contemplate these different things. Often they're busy in making, the decision of the day. These are bigger things. And, thinking about a full store retro is sometimes so big and so sort of that I don't even want to start thinking about it because it's going to cost me a lot of money. It's going to spend a lot of time. It's going to create a lot of confusion. But I do think that, the future of independent retail is dependent on keeping up with the times and some of these things. And we need to be always changing little bits, sometimes bigger bits, and sometimes entire brands and stores in order to make things happen for us as we look down the road. And, I loved our conversation today. If you could sort of give one last piece of advice to an independent shoe store owner at this point in time, what would it be, Lyn?
Travel and shop other stores, not even in the shoe industry, but don't get stuck behind your cash register all the time and in your store all the time. A lot of these, and that's the beauty of things like the National Shoe Retailers Association, is they have their conferences and of course the shoe shows out there. It forces people to go out and visit other communities, other cities, other retailers, because that's where you're going to see who's doing what and who's doing what well. And the more you are tuned in to this sensory customer experience that you need to create, the more you're going to absorb good ideas from others, because you need to start thinking through all of your senses and thinking out of the box, not just where you've been for the last 10, 20 years, but what is important today to get your retail environment engaging, emotionally engaging. How can you do it different? So, eyes wide open, ears wide open, go out and shop other places, travel. That to me is one of the biggest gifts for a store owner. And it's easier then for us to work with them when they've kind of seen what's possible.
I love it. Thanks so much, Lyn, for taking part and taking the time to spend with me. If anybody wants to reach out to you or learn more about your business, where should they go?
They can go to retailworksinc.com or email me at lfalk@retailworksinc.com. So LFALK at retailworksinc.com. And I am quite accessible, and I do get back to everyone quite quickly because I am a workaholic.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, Lyn. Thanks again. And I'd love to have you back on.
I would love to be back on, Pete. Thank you very much.
Make it a great day.